about that last week. Here's another one of them. It's all right to eat bread that's only offered to the priests, that only the priests were supposed to eat on pain of death. But if it's there to save your life, that's a good thing. And so they were given the bread of the presence. They were also given the sword of Goliath. You know, I think what's happening here is that God is reminding David of great things in David's past, where God has rescued David, reminding him of his reliance upon God in huge catastrophes in the past so that he can go on living into the future. This, I think, is something that God does, and we need to hear it as well. God will remind you that he has taken care of you in the past when things are happening to you now. And we can rely upon him. We have built this reservoir of trust in the Lord so that we can move on into the situations that are facing us. And so David is reminded of God's faithfulness in the past so that he can go on into the future. He was reminded of what happened when he was younger. And he connects all of this together in his faith as he's being built up in the Lord. David is not alone in all of these bouncings that he has to go through. God sends him people to encourage him, sends him people to direct him, sends him people to help him out with the Lord's will. God does not leave us alone. He flees from Nob down to King Achish in Gath, and I think this is an odd choice. I mean, he's carrying Goliath's sword. You know, they had to recognize this thing. I would guess it would be huge. But he's carrying Goliath's sword, and he goes to Gath. I mean, it seems like an odd choice, but maybe they thought it was the last place that anybody would look for him. And he fails, though, in his attempt to join up with the Philistines. They're going, you know, hey, this is David. You know, he's been our enemy all these years. So he has to pretend to be crazy. He has to pretend to be nuts. Now, he goes back to Achish later on in the book, where they form a very important coalition, and it protects David's life even later. I think I put in a crazy person here. No. Oh, they recognize that David is the king of the land. That's an odd phrase, too, because Saul is obviously the king of the land, but they're still calling David king. And not only was Achish gullible, he believes David's sham, he believes David's pretense about being crazy, but then he says, we've got lots of crazy people in our town. Why do we need another one? You know, I think he thinks all of the people in Gath are nuts. You know, why have any more in our town? Let's run this guy out. Here, there's the crazy person. I put that in for the junior hires. I don't think it's a real hockey puck, but it sure looks funny. I typed in crazy person into my Google images, and that's what I got. So David had pretended to be crazy. He must have been a hockey player at some point in his life. And so then David goes from Achish. They run him out. He flees from them. He goes down to this cave at Adullam, and then later on into Mizpah. And there he starts working on his own personal bodyguard, his band of merry men, his army, who become very fiercely loyal to him. They have been run out of every good town in Israel and Judah. They have been run out of for a whole variety of reasons, probably some of them all right, you know, that they had crossed King Saul somewhere. Some were probably criminals, but all kinds of people were coming to David and joining up with him. And they form a very powerful background for what he's doing. So he's got 400 malcontents joining up with him. And this is an important ingredient for the rest of David's life. And we'll read about them later. They become the core of his military background. They don't always agree with David. And David doesn't always agree with them. And in fact, later on, he tells his son Solomon, you've got to get rid of one of these guys because he's going to come back and bite you if you don't. But it forms a very powerful ingredient in David's kingship. Meanwhile, back at Nob, Saul comes along, and he wants to know why he hasn't been able to find David. And he accuses all of his people that they're hiding him. Here is Saul with all the trappings of his power. He's sitting on a throne. He's got all of his servants around him. And you know, you've got to ask yourself, who really has the power here? He is in fact powerless. He cannot catch David because it is God who really is king and God who decides what's going on. And God is the king in Israel. God has the power. And Saul had no clue what about any of that. He accuses his officials of hiding David from him. But one person has seen where David went, and that was Doeg the Edomite. He is not an Israelite. He's not a Jew. I don't know that he even believes in the God of Israel. And he's living there, and he's an official in Saul's bureaucracy. He's the chief of the shepherds. And Doeg has seen where David went. And he turns David in. He informs Saul about Ahimelech's aid. And then Saul says, I want somebody to go down and kill all of those priests because they have betrayed me. And the rest of the people are going, we're not touching the priests. That's bad luck. We're not doing that. They haven't done anything wrong. But Doeg, being evil, says, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do anything to get ahead in this world. And Doeg goes down and kills all of these priests. Only one member of the priestly family escapes, Abiathar, or however you pronounce his name. Priests in that day were sometimes required to take loyalty oaths to the king. People come to you and they confess their sins and say, I've been part of a conspiracy to kill the king. Well, the priests were supposed to go and tell the king what was going on. Well, I don't know if Ahimelech has done this, but Saul thinks that he owes some loyalty, and Ahimelech failed to notify Saul that David was there. God was protecting David. So they kill off all the priests except for Abiathar, and now we have king-elect and priest-elect, because Abiathar will soon be high priest, or is high priest, joining forces together as fellow fugitives. God is bringing all of these pieces together in David's life. Saul had the king, the families, and the inhabitants of everybody in the city of Nob killed off. And we see that coming to play later on when David goes down to the city of Keilah to protect them. What is he going to do? Is he going to get caught there, or is Saul going to kill everybody in that town as well? And David doesn't want that on his hand. So David goes and protects this town. Even though its citizens had no particular love for David, David feels like he's got some responsibility to defend this town against the Philistines. And he goes and protects them. He is doing what the king was supposed to be doing. They had appointed Saul king so that he would protect them from the Philistines. Saul, in the meantime, all he's doing is out there chasing David. David, meantime, is doing what Saul was supposed to be doing, protecting the country. And so he saves this town of Keilah. I don't know how it's pronounced. The Philistines are once again threatening the borders of Judah.